And we are live. Today we are live with Jamie White. Thank you so much for coming onto the SEO Leadership podcast with Darius and I from SEO For Hire. Jamie White is a consultant. Very recently, he made the jump over to full-time SEO consulting. And he works at Jamie White SEO with over 15 years experience in driving organic growth for brands. Jamie has experience within director and head of SEO level work, as well as B2C and B2B clients, and covered a lot of industries, as well as retail, travel, accommodation, SaaS, and tech. So we are very excited to have you on today. You have an incredible amount of experience, and we're so excited to dive into our discussion for today. So Jamie, thank you so much for coming on. To kick things off, we just wanted to sort of dive into the topic of communication, its importance, and how can sort of SEOs enhance and improve their internal communication as well as externally, maybe cross-departmentally.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's changed drastically in the past few years is obviously the increase in remote working, which has made communication very different. I wouldn't necessarily say it's made it more difficult, but I think the way that people use it perhaps makes it a little bit more difficult. People are perhaps a little bit more hesitant to reach out to others, not knowing whether they're physically at their desk, at their computer, or whether they've got their headphones in and they're stuck into a project that they can't be distracted with. Whereas, I worked in offices 9 to 5 in person for about 12, 13 years, and people wouldn't hesitate to walk around the office and speak to others and sort of get that direct line of communication very quickly. So I think the way that people can really improve communication is perhaps to take the shackles off a little bit and maybe not feel so bad about dropping a message on Teams or Slack or whatever the internal comms tool is. People, from my experience over the past 2 or 3 years since that lockdown period and people being at home a lot more, seem a bit more hesitant to do that, and perhaps communicating on email, which doesn't necessarily demand an instant response, but you might need an instant response. So that's one thing that I think people can maybe be a little bit braver in going to people directly, and even perhaps just using like the call option on Teams rather than dropping in a DM. I know that's it's quite bold for some people to do that, but again, like having worked in offices for so long, it was not unheard of to pick up the phone and ring someone on another floor and expect them to pick up and speak to them straight away. That's one thing I've noticed that's changed a lot, and it's very interesting how I've witnessed both sides of it.
Definitely. Awesome. And just on that, Jamie, do you reckon sort of like more junior SEO people who are maybe starting their career now, that they'll suffer from when it comes to client-facing roles due to that sort of lack of office feel and everything being sort of fully remote?
I think so, yeah. I really, I'm still a big fan of face-to-face client meetings, not on such a regular basis as perhaps, we used to do, but certainly on that monthly or at least quarterly basis. And I think that the more that these become remote interactions, people aren't developing those crucial social skills that they would have done had they gone into work, 5-10 years ago, even just have those few years of experience. Yeah, people who are maybe graduating university right now and going into a role straight away, which is incredibly remote and quite disconnected, to then expect them to be able to interact with clients who typically are probably a bit more senior and have experienced it in both ways is quite a big ask. And I think that agencies can certainly do better and find ways to sort of encourage that face-to-face communication internally and externally to build up those skills.
Definitely. And go on, sorry.
And moving from, say, a junior role to, say, manager, even head of SEO director level, communication skills have to evolve over that time, as well as soft skills. For anyone in that transition period, do you have any sort of tips that you could give them in helping aid that transition over to, communicating and managing other people?
Yeah, I think quite a lot of this is very much built up on the job and learnt as you go on, because different environments are so starkly different to one another in terms of the agency or the company that they're based in. I think especially within digital marketing agencies, to progress within an SEO role, SEO is so wide-reaching across the agency that to build up relationships with other department heads or other senior managers within different disciplines can be one way to really open your eyes to how moving into that managerial role is going to rely on you to expand your own knowledge and your own skills beyond the pure discipline of working on SEO clients to, understanding stakeholder management, the financial impact of what you're doing on the business, winning new business and being involved in sales pitches. And that's something that as a person you've not been involved in and you're being expected to move into that position, then building those relationships with others within the company, you've already done that, is a really strong way to understand essentially just the inner workings of the agency that you genuinely might not have been exposed to until that point, because sometimes you can be very much in your own campaigns, in your own accounts, and not aware of the wider impact on the business until you're then exposed to it. So yeah, speaking to others who've taken that step is a really solid way to determine like how you can then progress yourself.
Awesome. Definitely. Perfect. I love that.
And Jamie, if you were to go back and sort of tell your junior SEO self anything, what would it be? Any sort of advice for sort of junior SEOs?
So I think the biggest regret in a way is that I was all agency throughout my whole career. So I never took on a role that was in-house. So even though I was in roles within the agency that had a lot of exposure to how our clients and their in-house teams operated, and never had that full 9-to-5, full-time experience working in that kind of environment. So that's quite a big bit of advice, I would say, that if someone really wanted to get a full view of how SEO operates, both from agency side and client side, then to try and take some kind of roles, even if it's short-term or contract-based, just to experience it behind the scenes. Because I think, again, within agency life, there's quite a lot of expectation and maybe a lot of frustration within agency SEO teams when things don't progress at the rate that they'd expect them to or want them to, without necessarily being sympathetic to the limitations that the client's currently having internally. For example, being able to push a change through a development team might be weeks and weeks of building up a business case. It's going to cost them money, cost them time. Whereas from an SEO perspective, within an agency, we see it as, well, let's just get this done. We want it done now because our rankings will improve. So yeah, I think that could be a really solid one, certainly for someone starting off in their career where they've got the opportunity to be flexible with their future roles. Explore that chance to sort of span across the industry in that way.
Brilliant. And obviously coming from sort of head of SEO, head of organic search, how do you sort of manage expectations within the team or manage client expectations? So I think from a team perspective, I've always been of the belief that I certainly not a micromanager, because SEO from account to account and situation to situation, it's very, very different. So even though there's some, obviously general guidelines in terms of best practice and what works and what doesn't within SEO, we really have to react from industry to industry in terms of how to approach a campaign. And if I was to start to micromanage the members of my team and dictate how they should be approaching their campaigns, first of all, it's no good for their development because they're not learning how to pick these things up themselves. And also it's no good for my time because I'm neglecting my true responsibilities to get too deeply involved in accounts. So when it came to management and certainly hiring, I would always look to hire people and always look for that skill of get up and go, proactiveness, and the ability to take a brief and run with it and be very much self-sufficient and self-managing, because I knew that it was no good for me and no good for them for me to micromanage in that way. So it was always a technique that I'd adopt. Brilliant.
Fantastic. On the topic of proactiveness, we've been speaking to a few of our recent webinar guests about the importance of starting side projects and how that can really help an SEO in staying up to date. For yourself, how important is that, especially now that you've moved into a freelance role and aspect? Do you make time to sort of set aside side projects, or how do you stay up to date? And to add to that, how can you sort of advise junior SEOs that are looking to start side projects?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one, really, because you do read that a lot of people claim online that you can't really be a true SEO unless you're doing these side projects and almost working for yourself, which I think is rubbish, frankly, because many people can be excellent SEOs work a 9-to-5 job, do a fantastic job for their team, their manager, their company, and shut off at the end of the day and turn up the next day and do a great job again. I think I was always of that belief until maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, when people did start to approach me and ask me to get involved in their brands as almost like a freelancer. So I've never really had my own side projects in terms of running my own websites, running affiliate websites, blogs, or anything like that. I've never done it for myself. I have other hobbies that take up my time there. But when people started to approach me and ask me to get involved in their brands and help from a freelance perspective, it was something I explored, because it then opened my eyes to a potential career change that I thought at that point in my life I was ready for. So I genuinely, as a piece of advice, really just say to people, if it's something that genuinely interests you and that's how you want to commit your time, then absolutely do it, because you will learn beyond the 9-to-5. But don't be downhearted if you don't feel that that's the right thing for you. Don't just take everything at face value that everyone on Twitter and everyone on LinkedIn says, because it's completely down to the individual.
Definitely. And I know there is a lot of noise on LinkedIn, a lot of sort of results that don't really make sense or don't show the whole picture. But obviously, moving into freelance role at the minute, how important was your personal branding and to sort of start off with new clients?
To be honest, I haven't really done a lot of work around that. It's something that I'll obviously start to put some time into now that I am working for myself. It's going to be really important for me going forward in terms of growing the work that I'm doing. But it's honestly not something that I've really put a lot of time into. All of the messaging that I've put on LinkedIn, which is pretty much the only social media platform that I use for work. I don't have a Twitter presence from an SEO perspective or anywhere else. Everything that I've put on from a LinkedIn perspective has been very much inspired by the work that I'm doing for the agency or the clients that I'm working on at that time. So it's never really been about me. It's been about the work that we're doing as a team and as an agency and sort of what's happening in the industry. That's obviously going to change now because I'm working for myself, so it does have to be about me. But I think that there's a lot of success that people can achieve without necessarily having to build up that personal brand, or building up that brand in a way that isn't necessarily the obvious ways of being very, very visible and a thought leader in that way, because that's not really how I've approached it. I guess I've built up my own personal brand by hopefully doing really good work for people, building good relationships internally, and then getting referrals and recommendations on the back of that. I'm genuinely quite a reserved and private individual with how much I put out there from a work perspective, but that's probably going to have to change now because, I'm relying upon myself basically.
Exactly. And was there anything that when you started your freelance that you sort of hadn't considered, and any sort of advice you would give to somebody, even maybe junior, who is considering starting freelance on the side?
Yeah, I'm literally 4 weeks into full-time freelance life, so I've probably not experienced nearly half as much as a lot of the people that you've spoken to have. I think what's really opened my eyes in this first 4 weeks, which has been incredibly fortunate for me, is how much time I've spent on speaking to potential new clients and putting together proposals and pitches and being involved in that process. I sort of earmarked January as being a month where I could just sort of get things in line, put more time into my existing clients and start to think about a bit of a marketing plan for myself. But when people heard that I was going freelance and working for myself, I all of a sudden started to get messages, people wanting to put me in touch with others within the industry, which is incredible. Like, I'm so fortunate to have that. So I would say, people potentially looking into this as a career path, be prepared to portion off a decent amount of time to put into proposals and pitching because they take up hours per week. And if you fill out your diary with client work, you won't have time to grow beyond that.
Brilliant.
Awesome. A few people are asking in the comments on your thoughts on the future of SEO, especially with AI. How do you tackle sort of managing adaptability, especially with your clients, and maintaining that? And do you have any advice to them?
Yeah, I think transparency is a big thing, really. You know, a lot of people in a very good way are being transparent with clients about the impact of AI, but also how it can actually be used to improve and make their processes more efficient. And so I think at that point, it's a case of being very open and honest and looking to collaborate with a client in terms of how they might want to utilize that technology. So I wouldn't be in a position where I would, claim to be producing pieces of content for a client naturally, and then using AI to do it myself, because that's obviously very misleading. But if, for example, I needed to put together 50 meta descriptions for a client, and that's going to take me X number of hours, but I can agree with them, let's just use ChatGPT and use the prompts in the right way to do that, and they're on board, then, you know, we've had that open and honest conversation. It saved them a lot of time and money. It saved me a lot of time, and we can move on to a project that's really going to deliver. With using these tools, I think using the prompts in the right way is such a big thing, rather than just saying, write me 50 meta descriptions on X. It's about, speak in this way, or use this terminology, you know, speak as if you were a brand that sells this type of product, and enhancing your prompts can really get a really good result from these tools.
Is there anybody that you sort of follow, or any sort of guides that you use to sort of learn the prompts or sort of develop them?
Not really, because I think it's still very much a new thing. Obviously, there's loads of people out there experimenting with ChatGPT and other AI software and doing some really clever stuff with. I wish I could name drop some people, but I'm generally just one of these people who sees something on Twitter, uses it for myself, and doesn't necessarily retweet, which is not great, but there's a lot of clever stuff going on out there. I know, I feel bad when I'm doing it, but I'm like, well, this is fantastic, and if I knew you personally, I'd give you a big shout out.
Awesome. I just wanted to sort of move into the topics of managing teams and your experience from director and head of SEO. I think let's kick off by asking, how do you identify A players? How important do you consider them to a team? And maybe if you could name 3 sort of characteristics that you maybe identify when looking to hire someone that stand out to you.
Absolutely, yeah. I mentioned one earlier, which is that proactiveness. To be able to see that in a person is so important from an SEO perspective, especially when hiring a sort of mid-level or senior level position, because as their manager or their department head, I'm not going to be tasking them with specific jobs on a daily basis to just follow and give back to me. You know, they're going to be owning accounts, owning campaigns, working with other people in the industry that they agency that they need to have that proactive nature. Excellent time management and organization. I'll lump that into one, but that is one that is so important when managing SEO accounts, because again, they might be managing half a dozen to 10 accounts depending on the size of that account, size of the agency. To be able to manage their time and be organized is incredibly important. And then I think one area that really sets a good SEO apart from a great SEO is, or the other way around, would be sort of that commercial sense and their awareness of what impact is the work that we're doing here having, not only on the rankings that we're going to achieve or the traffic that we're going to drive, but ultimately how is this going to grow the business, the client that I'm working for, and really tapping into those business objectives from day one and understanding what do you guys actually need to achieve as a business over the next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, and then working backwards from that to come up with an SEO strategy that they know is going to tie into it. That's such a strong attribute that sets people apart, especially with an interview process. To be able to demonstrate that is almost like you've got the job.
Big time. Eli Schwartz was saying that as well, that SEOs need to start speaking in terms of revenue and bottom line rather than just impressions and clicks. So definitely want to take on board for anybody listening. In terms of actual leadership style, Jamie, what sort of characteristics of management worked best on you when you were sort of starting off, and did you sort of incorporate that into yourself when you were becoming sort of head of organic search?
Yeah, so again, as I mentioned earlier, lack of micromanagement is so key within SEO. You know, I don't want someone breathing down my neck, no matter what role or what level of the company that I'm in. And similarly, I don't want to be doing that to others. It stunts their progression, and it takes time away from me, away from the important stuff that I'm working on. To be honest, what I've really benefited from in a couple of roles that I've been in, even in sort of semi-senior roles, is a really in-depth onboarding and training program around the stuff that I just wasn't familiar with at that time. So almost like a full list of, like, here's everything that we believe we know as an SEO team. Can you work through this and tell me the stuff that you really want to explore as an individual? And just being honest during those first few weeks in terms of where your skills lie and where where the areas are that you actually need some development in. Again, I hope people wouldn't be too proud to admit that they don't know everything when they step into a role. Sometimes it feels like you're very much under the spotlight and you have to impress straight away. But I'd much rather people come to me and say, I'm really not as strong or confident in these areas. Could we set aside some time and train on them? And I'm quite forthcoming in approaching people and asking them that question and making them realize that they don't have to hold back in admitting where they may lack certain strength or confidence.
Yeah, excellent. And we speak to a lot of sort of SEO execs who are maybe getting a lot of sort of SEO manager offers and things like that. Do you have any advice for them whenever they're making that step up to even incorporate into their first sort of 90 days?
Yeah, I think pretty much what I've just said there around being very open and honest with where your skills lie and where they don't, and asking as much as possible for what you actually need within that role. You know, not being too proud and not being too shy or worried about maybe playing down your abilities. You know, you've got that role for a reason. They obviously have confidence in you to do the job, but they don't expect you to be the finished article at that point. Definitely not. You know, SEO is a constant learning curve for anyone in any position of any seniority. So being very honest with your, you know, your shortcomings or areas that you lack confidence in, and constantly asking for support from the right people within the business. And if you don't get it, then potentially even going above them and saying, look, I've been put in this role and I'm not getting the support that I need. Again, much harder in the remote working world. That's so much easier when you can just go up to your manager 5 days a week in the office. And I can understand why potentially people do struggle with development if they're not able to get that support face to face. Yeah.
Awesome. I'd like to flip the question around to say maybe from the company's point of view, especially if it's a remote or hybrid setting. What are like some of the few like major factors that you consider completely vital or important when onboarding, say, in the first week, especially from a remote or hybrid setting?
Yeah, so just from a remote or hybrid setting, is this? Yeah, because obviously in a perfect world, I'd be getting a lot of face time in the office. But yeah, remote or hybrid settings, any training sessions or any interactive sessions should absolutely be done, obviously, in this format with video rather than just phone call or over sort of DM. Be that training or introductions to clients, introductions to other members of the team. That's absolutely essential just to understand that interaction, that way of determining the tone and also facial expressions and how people are actually communicating, because you need to understand where you sit within that organization and how to pick up on these cues from your manager. So yeah, anything face to face is crucial. And I suppose another area of that training program, which doesn't necessarily only rely on being remote or even face to face, is live examples and actually putting into practice the stuff that you're actually being trained on and coached in. So taking the training session on a certain discipline of technical SEO, for example, and actually going away and putting that into practice, working on a client's website. Or how I like to encourage people to do this is work on a website of a brand that you maybe shop with or a website that you use very regularly. So audit and critique their website, because you're going to have fun doing that. You're going to have fun browsing the website. And it just allows you to practice and implement the stuff that you're learning as well. And that can be done remotely, it can be done face to face, but it's a really good way just to get people sort of implementing and really taking on board the stuff that you're teaching them.
Awesome.
And Jamie, what's your sort of opinion on sort of SEOs who start off and straight away they're into like a sort of a technical SEO exec or a content SEO exec? What's your opinion on them sort of remaining down that niche, or would you advise them to sort of in their next role get something that's more sort of all around? Because I know you've had experience as like a technical SEO manager and also like account manager, so you've probably seen both sides of it. Do you have any advice for them?
I mean, for me, that's been incredibly beneficial because, as you just said then, I've been able to see things from every side of it. And even at Search Laboratory, I was in an account director role, which was very client focused, commercially focused. So I feel like all those different role changes have allowed me to build up a really well-rounded approach to SEO. But that is genuinely just one way of doing it. You know, there's a lot of people that I've worked with. There's a lot of people in the industry still that have been very much technical SEO focused throughout their career. They love doing it, they're excellent at it, and they've progressed. And similarly on the content side or more link building and PR side. So in all honesty, I think it really does come down to the individual. And if you do see your career going in a certain direction, then you obviously do need to adopt those roles that get you there. So in some cases, that might be very generalized, like myself. In some cases, it might be incredibly focused. But you can be an excellent technical SEO or an excellent content strategist without needing to go around the houses and do all those other positions as well.
Definitely. There was quite a bit of a scare when it came to AI and the content side of things. I think a lot of people would maybe switch to technical. But in terms of whenever you became a leader, or became into that management role, did you, obviously you didn't know how to lead straight away, but how did you have any sort of imposter syndrome, and how did you sort of combat that?
Yeah, I still do. And I've literally met with 3 other people this week, ex-colleagues, contacts, who are all saying the same thing. I think with SEO, it's such a common feeling because the industry changes so rapidly. It's not black and white. You could put a lot of effort into what you think is the right thing to do and genuinely see no results. That can actually, that can happen. Of course it can. Everyone will have experienced. So I think it's completely understandable that people feel imposter syndrome within this industry. I don't think it helps that you get a lot of people claiming to be making a ton of money and claiming to be seeing complete unending success online. That doesn't help things when the reality is a lot of people are, in agency roles or in client side roles, and so people might be worried about their future and what AI could be doing to take over. In terms of progressing into more senior roles, I think having a really strong mentoring system, support system around you is excellent. The biggest rate of progression that I saw was during my 7 years at Search Laboratory, and I worked with some excellent people there who'd been in managerial roles, very senior members of the team. It was a very open door policy within the agency, and I had a lot of support to allow me to progress in a way that sort of set me up for the last 2 years of my career before I then became freelance. So yeah, having that support network, if you can build it up in the right ways, is crucial, and you'll see a lot of benefit from it.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Excellent.
This actually transitions quite nicely into my question. How does Jamie White stay up to date in the industry? And especially now that you've moved into freelance as well, how do you network as well?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of staying up to date, so yeah, I'm on LinkedIn a lot of the time. So I follow a lot of SEO people. I'm connected with a lot of SEO people and keep a close eye in terms of industry developments, but also experiments and studies and case studies and things like that are quite unique to those people. I am quite active on Twitter in terms of viewing, but I just don't post very much work related.
Okay.
So I follow a lot of the key industry individuals and publications there. In terms of networking, in all honesty, because I'm quite new to this full time, it's not something that's really come on my radar yet. But even though I am based remotely, working from home mostly, I am spending quite a lot of time in Leeds city centre, working from co-working spaces. I was at one yesterday and I bumped into an ex-colleague and an ex-client straight away, and it's great just to have those familiar faces. I'm not sat there for 7 hours doing a day's work in silence. There's an interaction, and you just never know where those conversations are going to take you in the future as well.
100%.
And obviously moving to freelance, do you miss that sort of the company culture side of things, or how do you think you're going to sort of combat that down the line?
I do. I think that's probably going to be the biggest hurdle that I have to get over. I worked agency side 9 to 5, Monday to Friday for 14, 15 years. And all of a sudden I've had a huge shift in the way that I work. It's going to take me time to get over the expectation that I need to be at my desk at home for 8:45 and finish at 5 o'clock. And I think that will take months for me, knowing how I am as a person. And yeah, at the moment, I am missing that interactive nature of being able to drop people a message on Teams and grab a quick bit of lunch, go out for a walk, that sort of thing. But that's why getting out of the house, getting into co-working spaces is so important for me. Currently working for an agency 1 day a week in the centre of Leeds and going in face to face, whereas I could easily be doing that at home, but there's no benefit for me doing that. So yeah, for anyone either in freelance who's struggling or looking to step into freelance, if you have the opportunity to get out there and either see other people or even just be in a space with other people, it's very beneficial.
Awesome. Okay, well, that actually wraps up our time. That flew by quite quickly. Thank you, Jamie, so much for coming on. We loved your answers and your insight on some of our questions. For those who were listening, where can we find you most active? Is LinkedIn, we'd assume.
Definitely LinkedIn. Yeah, you won't find me posting anywhere else, to be honest, but I'm going to be ramping up the amount of stuff that I put on LinkedIn in the coming weeks and months.
Brilliant. Looking forward
Perfect.
to it.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's been great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and have a great weekend, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.